Welcome to another episode. I hope you and your loved ones are doing well. Today I will be discussing some tips for translators for being better and more successful in what they're doing. I have had translation job for quite some time, and I would be happy to share with you. You can also learn English grammar from the sessions that are focused on English grammar. So today's session is a set of tips for translators. When I say translators, it also includes interpreters and others who are working in the field of converting meaning from one language to the other, but primarily my focus will be on written translation work. To be successful and have a great output as a translator, you have to have certain work styles. I will discuss them one by one, but the areas that today we will discuss are that you have to read, you have to get acquainted with the material that you're translating, you have to note down difficult words, you have to access more than one dictionary, you have to empathize with the meaning. Meaning is inherent in two areas, generally and specifically, and I will discuss those. And I will wrap up with a brief review of it at the end. So stay with me. So the first point, to be a good translator, you have to read a lot. You have to have diverse reading material. You should have been exposed to all kinds of fiction, non-fiction, business, legal, art, poetry, and other areas of written material. Start with areas that interest you a lot and also get acquainted with different materials. Not to forget, you also should pull up your wallet and get acquainted with the information that is recorded on your documents, whether it's your driver's license or credit card or any other membership cards. See what are the information recorded on it and what the structure is and what all are not there. So what's there and what's eliminated. Another point about reading is that you have to read a lot. Try to read diverse information, whether it's from social media, from newspapers, from books. It will give you a lot of new vocabulary, plus it will get you acquainted with what's going on surrounding you and in the larger world. We all live in a globalized world. And it will also let you know about different points of view. Perspectives are very important when translation work is involved. Another thing about reading I would say is that read the job material very carefully before you start it. At least one time reading will get you acquainted. There would be some sentences whose context will be much more clearer in the following sentences or paragraphs or by the end of the material. So I would recommend, if time permits you, to read your material at least once before you start the translation work. Next topic today we will discuss about the tips is getting acquainted. So you have to take the job in your hand and get acquainted with what it entails, what it's discussing, what different voices are if there's more than one character speaking, and the issues involved. You have to be aware of the issues that is discussed in the translation material. And finally, about getting acquainted, you have to get acquainted with the structure. Every job material given to you has a structure, and get acquainted with that. The next tip involves in noting down the difficult words. You might come across a number of difficult words that you might have never encountered before, or you have a certain passing knowledge about it. So quickly take out and note down those words that you might find challenging. There would also be words that you know the meaning, but you might have more than one option of using it in context. So noting down the words will help you before you start your translation. Another advice is for translation. Another tip is to access more than one dictionary. Try to have more than one dictionary, whether it's hard copy or online, so you get a broad range of meanings about a certain word that you're translating. Usually the limitation about one dictionary is that's printed at a certain time. For example, 1995 or 1965. So the usage of certain words in certain area up to the point that that dictionary was printed is included there. But once you have more than one dictionary, you can actually have more words to translate, and also variety of options. You might find something that's closer to the meaning that you intend to express. The next step I would give is empathize with the meaning. Here I want to say by empathize with the meaning is that you have to use your imagination. You use your imagination, but conservatively. So by imagination, I do not mean that you expand on what it might have been and what all other options exist, but try to empathize, place yourself in the situation where the subject material is written or spoken or reported. So empathizing will give you a closest meaning in your translation, as well as a very good flair and flow to what you write. It would not be very dead and dry. It would be having a flow, a life to it. Next step is about meaning. Obviously in translation work, we all, whoever is involved in translation, work with meanings. So meaning is inherently present in two parts. Generally, meaning is inherent in time, place, and characteristics. With time, I mean, you have to look at which century it happened and how old is the writer, whether it's the voice of a child speaking, or their child when they wrote it, or when they spoke about the matter. Were they an elderly? Were they an expert? Which year it was. Second is place. It's very important to know the place where your subject translation material is coming from, whether it's a factory, whether it's a court, whether it's a school, a home setting, a foreign country, a rural place, or an urban place. Third one is characteristics. Meaning is inherent in the characteristics of the persons involved, and the writer or the speaker. So you have to get acquainted about the characteristics. For example, when a student says, I have to rush, is different from when a teacher says, I have to rush. And the teacher might rush for personal reasons, or for the reasons related to a student, or for the reasons related to the establishment or the curriculum. So you have to see the characteristics, and that would give you an inherent access to the meaning. But specifically, also there are certain guidelines about meaning. Above all, meaning is essential in intention, in personality, in context, and in culture. With intention, we have to know that when a material is written or spoken, what the intention of the speaker or the writer was. Is the person, by making those statements, agreeing with something or rejecting something or showing an ambivalence? Is the person in a mood of joy or of hurry or of danger, or in what mood they are? You also have to look at the personality of the writer or the speaker. So as we look back at the example earlier, if a student says, I am in a rush, or I have to rush it, it has a different meaning than a teacher. Sometimes you can think of two different teachers. One enters the class and says, we have no rush. Another teacher says, we have rush. So personality is very important, and knowing the personality of the writer or speaker through the material will give you an access to the meaning intended. Next one is context. The context is usually the perspective. You have to see what the language or the statement is made up of and what it wants to convey. Is it about a certain day, or is it about a certain century? Is it specific to that situation? Is it declaring something to be generally present with all human beings? So context is very important. As you're expressing a degree of risk or advantage or benefit or hope, you have to be aware of the context mentioned or omitted by the author. You have to strive to be as close in conveying the material as you see. The final point is meaning is inherent in culture. In certain culture, you would find the same sentence to have a different meaning. So you have to see whether it's spoken in an urban culture, in a rural culture, was it a workplace, and is it during an emergency. The culture in which the statement is made will give you an inherent access to the meaning. So I hope all these tips have been helpful to you. These were tips for translators, interpreters, and others who convert the meaning from one language to the other can also use it. And we discussed translators reading a lot of material, diverse material, getting acquainted with their subject material, noting down words that are challenging or special, accessing more than one dictionary, empathizing with the meaning, using imagination but very conservatively, knowing that meaning is inherent in generally in time, place, and characteristics, and specifically in intention, personality, context, and culture. Thank you for listening. I'll be back with more videos related to translation as well as grammar lessons. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and also share with your close ones. Thank you. Have a good day.